Yes, one person can change the world. My organization, JUCCCE, has changed China 5 times over. And in these 15 minutes, I'm going to show you how. Hi, my name is Peggy Liu, and this is my story of how I became China's green goddess. As the head of a leading environmental organization that has been at the heart of the greening of China since 2007, I've been a catalyst for societal scale change to better personal and planetary health for almost a decade and a half. When I was younger, I read a lot of sci-fi, like Isaac Asimov and Frank Herbert, which let me imagine how one person could change the entire universe. I remember very clearly in 7th grade wanting to go to MIT to learn how to build robots to improve the living standards in the world. But like all change makers, I didn't really know where to begin in making significant changes in the world. I felt like a small Chinese girl, powerless to make an impact. In fact, when I first started JUICE to combat climate change in China through international collaboration, one advisor remarked that some people, Peggy, will tell you that climate change is an insurmountable problem. Another advisor said that this problem was like a tsunami, and my main concern will be how to stay on top of the crest. Do those struggles resonate with you? When you feel insignificant and powerless, remember that to the small portion of the 7 billion we help, we have saved their entire world. I found that helping a single person change their life brings me so much joy. And improving the lives of tens of millions, if not billions of people, is an adrenaline rush. Being in service to humanity is addictive. My journey at JUICE started when I created the first public dialogues between US and Chinese government officials on clean energy. This multidisciplinary bilateral conversation with over 400 attendees catalyzed momentum in the clean energy industry that led to China's leadership in clean energy globally. None of this historic moment was part of a grand plan. I wasn't a clean energy expert. I didn't want to get involved in politics, and climate change seemed like a daunting mission. If I had made a decision to get involved based on analyzing the situation, most likely I would have not chosen to dive in headfirst and commit 10 years of my life to JUICE. But at the moment that I decided to found JUICE, and every moment thereafter, I listened to my gut and I just jumped in. I magnetized people to the mission and energized movement after movement. In hindsight, I've learned that I needed to throw away my engineering mind, my McKinsey critical analytical thinking, my Chinese discipline, my entrepreneurial business plans, and truly follow my heart and gut in order not just to climb the ladder, but take off on a rocket. I've also led JUICE through revolutionizing China's electrical grid by introducing smart grid technologies into China. From a simple white paper describing what smart grid looked like and how it could benefit China, to today, when China is now the leader in smart grid in the world, looking back on how we accomplished this in a short period of 3 years, I realized that there are only 2 grid companies in China, and one of them is Goliath, covering 80% of the landmass. In that China state grid, there was only one single department that looked at new innovative technologies. And in that department, only 2 people were authorized to talk to foreigners. So by surrounding these 2 people with experts from US, Canada, and Europe, and creating a safe space within our 3 summits to talk about possibilities, we were able to get State Grid to commit $7.2 billion into implementing smart grid across China by 2020. In hindsight, I recognize that this was an acupuncture point for changing the entire skeleton of electricity use across China. My job was to find the real decision makers, the real key influencers, and empower them with possibilities and solutions in a safe space that fully allowed them to create their future. At the same time, after the founding of JUCCCE, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development asked us to teach the first ever classes on how to build eco-cities at the National Academy for Mayors in China. We went on to teach 1,000 mayors and central government officials across China and started an eco-city movement. We brought in experts from around the world to share best practices and city-scale solutions to Chinese mayors of cities large and small. China now is the global leader in implementation of sustainable solutions at city scale. Here's a little-known secret about how the Chinese government is run. All government officials have to take a mandatory 12 days of training each year, or even longer if they're about to be promoted. This is China's key tool to managing gigascale change at giga pace without creating massive chaos. This is how they push out new policies and best practices throughout this training channel across China. In hindsight, I recognize that all of these mayors are acupuncture points for their change in their cities. And being allowed to lecture at 3 academies over the years allowed me to adjust the entire meridian system of China. JUCCCE also triggered the shift in using incandescent light bulbs to energy-efficient light bulbs, swapping out old light bulbs for new CFLs across 8 cities. To start this movement, we had the help of GE Lighting, Phillips Lighting, company executives from L'Oreal to Citibank to PwC and more, and the famous actress Li Bingbing, and China's first top supermodel, Du Juan. China's building codes now mandate energy-efficient lighting, and China is now the global leader in LEDs. In hindsight, I realized that it was more than just celebrity names that helped to make this change, because there's an awful lot of campaigns with celebrities attached to them that simply haven't worked. The key to our success was doing it collectively and publicly and from a place of joy. And the way that we involved celebrities wasn't about focusing their energies on something that was wrong in society that needed to be fixed, but rather to help us amp up the joy of everyone partaking in this movement together. This heart-based energy helped create a new social norm, and it helped create a new way of living that everyone wanted to thrive in. In 2013, I realized that food is the single largest source, 30% of climate-damaging emissions, and that growing food uses 70% of all drinking water and pollutes it with feces and pesticides and fertilizers. I realized that playing with food is the greatest way to engage kids with their heart about environmental issues. Sharing food, after all, is sharing love. So JUCCCE designed a game-based curriculum for young children to learn how good food leads to healthy bodies and healthy planet. Food Heroes is now the most comprehensive curriculum on sustainable nutrition. Food, you see, is a Trojan horse that gets around barriers of politics and apathy around climate change. So I learned that sometimes the path to change isn't addressing the core issue head-on. One of the most astounding successes of JUCCCE was when we started a countrywide conversation on reimagining prosperity sustainably, which led to the national slogan, China Dream, on billboards everywhere. I once asked my nanny, Cui Fengqing, who must be over 65 now, what was her dream when she was younger? She was sent from the urban setting of Shanghai to a rural village to plant rice for 7 years during the Cultural Revolution. She couldn't go to school, so she tried to read to educate herself. There was a famine across the country, so only once a year the government would come by and give the household frozen eggs so they can make egg dumplings to celebrate the Chinese New Year. When I asked her, what was your dream when you were younger? She said she didn't have one. She didn't dare to have one because they were only worried about day-to-day survival. For me, crafting the China Dream conversations meant giving permission to everyone that they could have a dream, an audacious dream. By dreaming together, we see that it's okay to ignite our belief that there is a better tomorrow where everyone lives in harmony and with dignity, one that they couldn't have imagined for themselves before. In 2010, I had come to the conclusion that JUCCCE couldn't only spend our time on sustainable energy infrastructure. We also needed to change people's behavior to reduce our impact on nature. So I spent some time researching what groups had been successful in changing attitudes towards contraceptive use, towards road safety, towards smoking, towards normalizing LGBTQ communities. I went around the world and I sought out behavior change experts. I met at Davos a professor named Sheena Iyengar from Columbia University, and she said something that has shaped everything that JUCCCE has done since then. She said, feelings win over facts. If your brain says, hey, I'm the expert, let me give you all this data about why vegetarian diets are good for you, or why clean energy is better than coal and oil, just listen to me and change your behavior. Well, that doesn't actually work. The only thing that changes behavior is when you make somebody feel loved and special, and you feel like this new behavior is going to add to your personal prosperity. I realized that we needed to retell the story of sustainability by reimagining prosperity. We needed to stop speaking to people's heads and speak to people's hearts. We needed a new love story between people and planet. But to lead this China Dream initiative in this direction, I had to first make a huge shift in myself to open my emotions. Because you see, I went to MIT and studied computer engineering to build robots and change the world through technology. And I wrote and lived by business plans and spreadsheets as an entrepreneur to birth companies. And because in Chinese culture, in my generation, you don't say, I love you to your children. So honestly, I couldn't do it by myself. So the universe brought me to the global creative director of Saatchi & Saatchi S. Julian Bora and his team created a methodology to help reimagine prosperity and retell the story of sustainability through a series of workshops. And we asked them to draw out their China dream in pictures and use emotional words. In these conversations, we focused people's attention not on what they didn't want in their lives, but what they did want. And we asked them to ignite their imagination and paint the world as you wanted it to be. In hindsight, China Dream swept the imagination of the nation and our president because we started to single-mindedly focus on the world that we want as if it were real now. To change the world, be the director of the movie of the future you want. To figure out what kind of world that you want to paint, just follow your curiosity. Follow your sense of magical wonder of what could be, and follow your joy. Love every detail of that world. Describe that world to others with such passion that people are drawn into that world. I call this storytelling for a purpose, where imagination becomes reality. So yes, one person can change the world. It starts with that one person's imagination, magnetizing like-hearted people to act as one together. My greatest learning is that to transform the world, we must first transform ourselves. We need to remove the barriers that separate us from one another. We need to connect through our hearts and not just our minds. On the last day of the last year of the last decade, my kids and I were eating together just outside the heart of Pele, the goddess of fire and volcanoes, the creator of sacred Hawaiian islands. My 102-year-old grandmother had just passed a couple weeks earlier. So as I sat in front of them with the clock ticking towards midnight, towards the end of the decade, I felt this pressing need to lean in and share with them the secret to life, the universe, and their purpose. I said, when you feel unsure of yourself, just remember that you're already successful. You are completely loved, and in fact, you are love itself. When you feel powerless, know that all humans have the extraordinary power to create, just like your mom and dad created you, because you're a fragment of the Creator who has infinite power to create. And that means you also have no limits. Your opportunities are endless and bounded only by your imagination. Where you focus your attention is the intention that creates your world. And at every now moment, you're unintentionally creating the world that you live in. Your mind doesn't remember this, but your heart does. So listen to your heart and focus on what brings you joy. And use your power of imagination to dream of a world where everything that brings you joy is in one place. But now that you know that you have the power to shape the world, that you have the power to shape reality itself, you now have the responsibility to create good ones. If you want to learn more about the secret to life that I shared with my kids, check out my Facebook page, I Create Reality. To learn more about JUCCCE and see some of my other speeches, see juice.org/press. To learn about how we teach kids to love good food, see foodheroes.org. To intern or volunteer with us, see juice.org/internship. Thank you so much, and may you be the true creator that you were meant to be.